Hello there, and welcome to a Monday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the next 2 hours. We got Monday Night Football coming up at 5, Niners and Panthers. Some people are excited about that matchup. And our coverage from Westwood One begins at 5 if you are one of those people. In the meantime, if you would like to reach out, converse, this is a participatory experience. 719-247-1313 is the text line today. That would be the best way for you to get through, as I am I'm in betwixt two trips. Just got back from San Diego, and I will be heading to Miami. Well, flying into Miami, going up to Boca Raton for women's basketball during the holiday. So text message, best way to reach out. Love to hear from you on this Monday. Let's actually start with the NFL, shall we? Because this was a good chance to kind of, especially if you're someone who has locked into the Denver Broncos, and that's been, your Sunday plans every single Sunday, and you haven't checked out a lot of the other teams. This weekend, I should say, was a good chance for you to kind of survey the entire landscape without any one game drawing most of your attention. And I kind of did that same thing. Obviously, the 11 a.m. Sunday game was important to me, but watched a lot of football. And here's my takeaway as it pertains to the Denver Broncos. And I think I had said this after the Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs, or intimated this. And what I saw this weekend kind of further fortified it for me. The Broncos can represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. They can. I'm not saying they will, but to not have this team listed among those in the AFC that you could see getting out of the conference, I just think, what else do you need to see from this team? Right? What else do you need to see? They keep winning. They've beaten both teams from last year's Super Bowl, which I think is significant. You're not going to see them against Buffalo, Baltimore until the playoffs. So there's nothing for you to go on. I'm not saying you have to pick the Denver Broncos to get out of the AFC, but to think that they're not on the list of potential teams to get out of the AFC, I think that they have to be on that list. And here's the reason why. And I don't think that list is short, honestly. What Roger Goodell will call this is parity. Real top to bottom parity in the National Football League this year, where there are a lot of teams that, including the Broncos, Colts, Jaguars, that Patriots, that I wouldn't say even most people thought would be in the positions that they're in right now. And forever, it's just been, oh, your team has a chance to make the playoffs, right? Right, each year, because the worst teams get the easiest schedules, all that kind of stuff. But what lacked was the parity of any team being able to get out of their conference and go to the Super Bowl, or even win their division, right? Think about how many teams have had a stranglehold on their division for years. Look no further than the AFC West. So there was parity, but there wasn't parity to the extent that we seem to have this year. The number of new teams that we are discussing at the top of their division or at the top of the conference that are legit contenders to get out of the AFC. And parity is the nice way to put it. The way I'm going to put it might be putting down the product a little bit, but I mean it. Part of the reason why the Denver Broncos and so many other teams are on the list to potentially get out of the AFC is because there is not one team in the American Football Conference that is remarkable. It is a conference filled with unremarkable teams. Teams that you are not going to hold up for years from now and say, remember how great Team X was. You know what we have right now starting in the NFL. We have what the NBA has had for years. This revolving door of, okay, it's the Lakers, now it's, Milwaukee, and then it's Denver, and then it's Golden State pops up and wins another one, and now we'll see what happens with OKC. Right now, they're just one team in line with all these others. They look like they have the potential to be more. But let's wait and find out if Oklahoma City actually repeats as champions or makes multiple return trips to the NBA Finals. But that's what the NBA has had. Doesn't mean there aren't great players. Doesn't mean that they lack for talent. But what it means is that there aren't the Warriors at the height of their powers. There aren't the Lakers of the Kobe Shaq era. There aren't the Duncan Spurs. There aren't dynasties. Right? And you can be a remarkable team without ultimately becoming a dynasty. But in the NBA, almost every remarkable team, historically great team that we talk about is a dynastic team. Right? We could talk about Nikola Jokic and his greatness individually. But the Nuggets aren't now this all-time great team. And in the NFL, it's similar, right? We went from, well, in most of my lifetime, it was the Patriots, and now it's the Kansas City Chiefs. But now you're looking at it, and the Chiefs are down. But what's happening too is it's not just that there's not that team at the very top, this all-time great team that we're having these huge conversations about. We don't even have the teams that are the worthy adversaries for that. And here's what I mean. I believe that having a dynastic, all-time great team in your midst gives you something to strive for if you are not that team. Right? And not just in terms of the offseason and building up your team, but the way you play week in and week out. There's a goal here of, we got to be this in order to beat Kansas City. Or before Kansas City rose, it was, we got to be this to beat New England. Right? Look at what the Broncos built themselves up to be with Peyton Manning and ultimately became. to be able to knock off Brady and Belichick. I think without, and let's just call the team by name because they've been the dynasty lately, without the Kansas City Chiefs, right? With how they've fallen off, they're 6-5. Haven't you noticed around the league that the teams that are usually trying to build themselves up and go after Kansas City are not at the height of their powers either? Buffalo, Baltimore. I don't look at either one of these teams and say that they're as good as they used to be. And you watch, especially Buffalo, let's see how week 12 started. Week 12 started with the Buffalo Bills losing to the Houston Texans, which is a couple of games after they lost to the Miami Dolphins. And we know what Baltimore has been. Yes, with Lamar Jackson out for the last few weeks, but what were they with Lamar? Every single one of these teams has their warts. But every single one of these teams, too, is so inconsistent from week to week. Buffalo, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, these are inconsistent teams. But yet here are the Denver Broncos who are not, and we can talk about their defense, but their offense is completely forgettable. No one is going to remember Bo Nix's exploits this year or Cortland Sutton's or anything on the offensive side of the Broncos. Now, that defense may be remembered. We'll see where they end up. But there's no dominant team. There's no team that you look at and say, wow, they're great. There's no greatness this year in the AFC. The Kansas City Chiefs aren't great. The Buffalo Bills aren't great. The Baltimore Ravens aren't great. And I'm not ready to say that the Broncos, Patriots, or Colts are great. We have a conference full of unremarkable teams. Remarkable players. Lamar Jackson's remarkable. Josh Allen is remarkable. The Broncos defense is remarkable. Jonathan Taylor. But in the ultimate team sport, you need more than just that one thing. And nobody has more than the one thing. And it's leading to week in and week out a lot of very tightly contested games. Teams that were ready to jump on the bandwagon, and then we have to jump right off because they look bad. The lack of consistency. The Broncos, you could poke holes in their resume, and you can certainly bring up the offensive side of the ball and how you don't believe in it, and that's fine. But you have to acknowledge this team is arguably the most consistent in the AFC. They may be consistently unremarkable on the offensive side of the football, but they're consistent enough that they keep on winning games. So what I feel like, if you're not an NBA fan, maybe you don't see quite what is happening this year in the NFL. If you are an NBA fan, you know what I'm talking about. The feeling that it is wide open, which I don't mean to say is a bad thing necessarily. Part of the reason why the NFL is where it is because of the level of parity it has had consistently. At least that a team that finished near the bottom can find their way to the top of their division, like we get one every year. So I'm not saying it's terrible for this year for it to be wide open like it is, but there's a reason for it. And the reason is is because there is no team at the top of that proverbial mountain that not only is remarkable and historically great, but there's also not the team at the top of that mountain that everyone else is climbing to try and reach. The summit is vacant. And there's at least a half a dozen teams in the AFC that are like, well, we can get up there first. I mean, in the AFC, it's probably AFC West is probably 3 teams that still have that thought in their head: Kansas City, LA, and Denver. 3 now because of the door that was opened with the Houston win over Buffalo. There's probably 3 teams in the AFC South: Jacksonville, Indy, and Houston, who all kind of believe that. In the East, there's 2 with New England and Buffalo. In the North, there's 2, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, but who knows what Cincinnati thinks of itself now that Joe Burrow will be back on Thanksgiving. What a time for him to come back into the mix. Because a team that goes on a 5-game winning streak could win their division. But that's my biggest takeaway, being away from the Broncos for a week, not having that take all my attention on a Sunday, kind of be able to peruse and check out what's going on in week 12. And my biggest takeaway, it is wide open. There is not a great team in this group. Not one in the American Football Conference. And there might be only one that is kind of there. We can have a discussion about one team in the NFC. And I'll get to that team a little bit later. In the meantime, I'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. What were your biggest takeaways from week 12 without the Denver Broncos in action? And do you feel better or worse about the Broncos' chances of representing the AFC in the Super Bowl? Because what I am saying here is that if you're a Broncos fan, you should feel better. Because there's not a great team, an unbeatable team, like we have had for more than 20 years, whether it's Kansas City or New England. More Drive Time Sports after this. Get a jump on your holiday gift giving with the Louisa Graff Black Friday giveaway. Just go to extrasports1300.com to enter to win a sterling silver lab-grown diamond pendant and earring set from the fine folks at Louisa Graff Jewelers. Entries close on Wednesday. That's this Wednesday, November 26th. So extrasports1300.com. You could get in at 719-247-1313. This text coming in. Hi, Ryan. As a diehard Denver Broncos fan, I am ecstatic just for the reason you're talking about. We can literally be any team in the AFC if we have a good day, and the prospects of us going to the Super Bowl are not a fairy tale, but a reality. The downside, Rams look great. They look like the best team in the NFL to me, and they're firing on all cylinders. I'm going to be hard-pressed for an AFC team to beat those guys, but it sure won't be great. It sure would be great to be in the position to do that. Go Broncos. And then adds, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the Shedeur Sanders win in Cleveland. One thing at a time, texter. But it's but that's exactly where I was going. There is one team in the NFL that, and I don't know if they're all-time great, but like for this year, they're great. Like the Rams, and I know, look, that game would have been closer had Baker Mayfield not gotten hurt. Right? But this coming from OptaStats, they have the best scoring defense in the NFL, even better than the Broncos, 16.3 points per game. And they have, who I think right now, if the season ended today, would be the MVP of the league, which is Matthew Stafford. So there's part of the reason why I say there's not a remarkable team in the bunch in the NFL right now is because it just doesn't seem like there are many teams that can put both sides of the football together. Both sides, there's not one team other than LA that has both sides of the football right. That's the way I would put it. Right? Broncos, we know. Broncos are defense, and their offense is not very good. It's good enough for them to win games, but it's not great. Nobody is going to be effusive with their praise when it comes to the Denver Broncos offense, nor should they be. Okay? You know, Kansas City, they win the game yesterday, but like, look at the way that Mahomes is playing. That defense, good on the Chiefs defense yesterday for slowing down and really stopping Jonathan Taylor. But like Mahomes has thrown interceptions in 3 straight games. He coughed it up, up against his own end zone. Yes, later in the game when he needed to make the throws, he made them. And that's, that looked like Patrick Mahomes. But there hasn't been enough of that this season. There just hasn't been. In Buffalo, I really like their offense as long as Josh Allen takes care of the basketball, takes care of the football. But the Bills' defense is not good. It's not a good defense. And you could go down the list, and now that the texture brought it up, let's just combine. Let's take the entire league. Jalen Hurts right now is the regular season Jalen Hurts. And I know there's belief from me that I think that Philadelphia will ultimately be okay when the playoffs roll around because that's when Jalen Hurts is at his best during the regular season. He is mediocre. He is a mediocre quarterback, and he always has been. But for some reason, when he's now, I was going to say he's the NFL version of Jamal Murray, but I like the way that Jamal Murray is playing during the regular season right now. But just go down the list. There's only one team that right now you can look at and say both sides of the football, they're good. Just that. Run every NFL team through that test. The Rams are the only one that you can statistically point to reasons why both sides of the football are good. They're the only team. Every other team has been either has one side of the football that is not pulling its weight, or you could just chalk them up to being wildly inconsistent. And here the Rams are at the top of the NFC, at the top of the NFL, with one of the best defenses in the league and the leading candidate for MVP right now. I don't know that there's another team that deserves to be in this conversation with LA. And because of how wild this NFL season has been, who knows? Everyone's going to start paying attention to LA now. If they weren't before, they will now. And who knows? 3 weeks from now, maybe something happens to the Rams, and now we don't think of them highly anymore. But right now, there's only one team that you can prove with statistical evidence is good on offense and good on defense. And with the record and the way they play week in and week out, you could say they are consistent. And here's the last part of it. You can believe in the Rams in the postseason. We've seen this movie before. You know, one thing that really sticks out to me right now in the NFL, if you notice that it's not just the Broncos with their second-year quarterback who are winning a lot of games. Drake May is winning a lot of football games in year 2. And Caleb Williams, remember how much of a disaster last year was? Go look at the NFC North standings. Who's leading the NFC North right now? It's Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. You believe in them in the postseason? I don't know that I do. I don't know that I can back New England, and I don't know that I can back Denver ultimately. But here they are, a trio of teams with second-year quarterbacks that are sitting at the top of their division. And by the way, New England's doing it at the expense of Buffalo, Denver's doing it at the expense of Kansas City, and Chicago is doing it at the expense of basically everyone else in that division. Because we're only a year removed from the Minnesota Vikings being a good team, right? They're not now. But Green Bay, Super Bowl contender. Detroit, Super Bowl contender. Yet they've taken a step back, and credit to Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. They've gotten it right at the right time. They picked the right year. I think that's what a lot of these teams are. You look at them right now, and boy, did they pick the right year to get enough right. I think the Bears are a great team. I don't think pound for pound they're the best team in that division. Game tomorrow against Detroit or Green Bay, I'm taking Detroit or Green Bay over Chicago. But right now, the Rams are the only team that deserve deserve their flowers. Everyone else is one-sided. Defense or offense is wildly inconsistent, or option 3, you can't buy into them fully, despite what their record says. Denver might be in that mix. New England might be in that mix. I think for a lot of people, Chicago is in that mix. It's wide open. It's wide open. And if you have a team, I mean, let's. So I went through the AFC. I think there's 2 in the East, New England and Buffalo, who think they got a shot. 3 in the AFC West, LA, Kansas City, Denver, obviously. 3 in the South, Indy, Jacksonville, and now Houston after they won a must-win game against Buffalo on Thursday night. And then you got 2 in the North, maybe 3 with the Bengals getting Joe Burrow back. Although we saw this last year, right? And where did the Bengals end up? On the outside of the playoffs looking at. So let's see Cincinnati rattle off a few wins before we get them back in this mix. But you have Baltimore and you have Pittsburgh. Do you love it? Are any of those teams deserving of being truly placed above all the rest? No. You can make arguments for every single one of those teams I just mentioned. And you can make arguments against them. NFC, there's a clear team that you have to say, all right, we believe in the Rams. But am I throwing in the towel on Green Bay? Am I closing the door on Detroit? I'm not. And I know we'll have to see what happens with Baker Mayfield's injury and all this stuff, but I'm not closing the door on Tampa either. It got bad last night. And Philadelphia. And here's the other thing. There are some games that they're losing that are divisional, right? Eagles lost to a division opponent. And their previous loss was against a divisional opponent. The bad Buffalo loss recently was to a division opponent, which are games that normally lend themselves to being close. But I mean, if you're an elite team, if you want to be looked at as the cream of the crop, so to speak, man, you can't be as inconsistent as Buffalo has been lately, as Tampa Bay has been lately. And what's going on with Detroit and Dan Campbell and the play calling? In the NFC, it feels a little bit more dire because you have that team at the top that you say they're really good. They're playoff tested. They're not young. They got a good defense. They got a good quarterback, good offense, good coach. They check. LA Rams check the most boxes of any team in the NFL. But there are plenty of other teams that at least check off a few to where you're like, well, maybe playoff Jalen Hurts shows up. Yeah, Philadelphia can get out of the NFC. But we're seeing parity in the National Football League that we really haven't seen lately. We really haven't. Because there's always been a ruling class of team. Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City, San Francisco, Philadelphia, where it's like, yeah, my team can get to here, but they can't ultimately get to the top because Baltimore's there, or Buffalo's there, or Kansas City is there, or Philadelphia, or San Francisco. We haven't seen parity like this in the NFL in a single season in years. And to the Texans' point, If you got a team in the mix, if you have one of those teams I just mentioned, you got to like your chances. You really do. I could poke holes in any team in the NFL's resume right now, except maybe the Rams. But I could also make a case for a number of teams. 719-24-7-1313. Back after this. One other big takeaway I had from week 12, sans the Denver Broncos. Kevin Stefanski should have gotten Shedeur Sanders ready to play for the Cleveland Browns out of the bye week. That's what he should have done. Now, I've cut Kevin Stefanski some slack here. I have, because look, they stumbled out of the gate. They traded Joe Flacco, and I said Dylan Gabriel is the quarterback that is more ready to come off the bench in a game, like when everyone was freaking out that Dylan Gabriel was the first guy called upon when Joe Flacco, if Joe Flacco were to get hurt, it would go to Dylan Gabriel. I had no problem with that because I think Shedeur needed a little bit more time. And when Cincinnati came calling and traded for Joe Flacco to try and save their season, I didn't even blame Kevin Stefanski for going with Dylan Gabriel at that point. But you went into the bye week getting your butts handed to you by the New England Patriots. Okay, so there was no momentum. There was no, we're seeing some things in Dylan Gabriel here that we should build upon during the bye week. There was none of that. I don't fault the way that Kevin Stefanski handled this quarterback situation until he came out of the bye week with Dylan Gabriel still as the quarterback. That was the mistake. And I just think that there's nothing nefarious going on here. Shedeur isn't being unfairly persecuted or any of this kind of stuff. It's just that Kevin Stefanski likes Dylan Gabriel better. He just does. He likes him better. Do I understand why? No, I don't. Because Shedeur Sanders is more talented than Dylan Gabriel is. I don't understand it. But that's the reason. It's not anti-Shedeur necessarily. Maybe some part of it is, but he just likes Dylan Gabriel better. But I understand why people turn that into he must hate Shedeur. Because I watched Dylan Gabriel play football, and I'm like, well, at times he must hate Shedeur if he doesn't see that Shedeur Sanders can do better than this. But Kevin Stefanski waited too long. He should have made the move to Shedeur coming out of the bye week. And he'd be ahead of where he is now, which is despite Dylan Gabriel being healthy and coming out of the concussion protocol, Shedeur Sanders will be the starting quarterback this Sunday for the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are just late. They're later than they could have been. They could have been finding out the last 3 weeks who Shedeur Sanders is and whether he's worth investing in for the future. Because I could tell you early Dylan Gabriel wasn't. So the Browns are the mistake that Kevin Stefanski made was not putting Shedeur Sanders in coming out of the bye week, and now they're just a few weeks behind where they could have been. Now, does it change everything for this Browns team? I kind of think they're going to take a quarterback with their first pick. I kind of do, even if Shedeur shows something beyond what he showed on Sunday that he may be worth investing in. I think there's too much heat right now on Andrew Berry, on Kevin Stefanski. Who knows if those two are even going to be a part of the team next year. The fan base is going to be drooling over one of these quarterbacks. The Browns are going to be picking high. I think unless the Browns somehow end up, out of the top 10 or just not in a great place to be able to draft a quarterback, I think they're going to take one. But you could have had more data on Shedeur Sanders if you just would have came out of the bye week with him. That's the mistake that Kevin Stefanski made. He didn't make the worst mistake in the history of developing quarterbacks. So let's not make it out to be more than what it was. The discourse that came down about Shedeur not getting first team reps and all that, that was just the most ridiculous stuff. Like, I think Kevin Stefanski has screwed some things up, but what he's being accused of and what Stephen A. and some of these knuckleheads on ESPN think about this situation is completely and utterly ridiculous. Nobody has it in for Shedeur Sanders with the Cleveland Browns. There is a preference. Was that preference correct? Ultimately, no, it wasn't. No, it was not. But now we can put this stuff to the side because Shedeur's the quarterback moving forward, and he has a chance to build upon his performance against the Raiders, which wasn't all world. But how low did the expectations get for Shedeur's first start after how he came in against the Ravens at the end of that game? I mean, even Deion's buddies in the national media were like, oh gosh, I don't know if he's going to be able to do this. So expectations could not have been lower for Shedeur Sanders. And I know that's part of the reason beyond the Shedeur of it all and the fact that it's Shedeur Sanders makes what happened yesterday feel bigger. It was a fine performance from a rookie quarterback in his first NFL start. It was a fine performance. And now he's got to build on it. But he should have been starting 3 weeks ago. By the way, just in case, let me launch a preemptive strike against anyone who might want to be like, oh, but it's the Raiders. Should quarterback A against the Raiders had 11 of 20, 209 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick. Quarterback B went 16 of 28 for 150 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks. You know who quarterback B is. Quarterback A is Shedeur Sanders. Quarterback B, Bo Nix. So just not that anybody texted in or anything like that. I just would like to launch a preemptive strike against anyone who wants to come in here and say, oh, Shedeur Sanders was going up against the Raiders. Big freaking deal. He was better than Bo Nix was against the Raiders. So let me just put that out there so we don't have to go down that road. But Shedeur Sanders was solid. He was good. He should have been the starter earlier, and I am very curious to see what he has in store for the last month or so of the season. And ultimately, I still think this is going towards the Cleveland Browns picking high in the draft and taking a quarterback. And depending on who that is, we can have a discussion comparing the bird in the hand, which is now going to be Shedeur Sanders, worth the quarterback in the bush, so to speak, which is Drew Aller or Arch Manning. Is he coming out now? Are we back on the Arch bandwagon? We'll get there. But right now, Shedeur Sanders should have been starting weeks ago, and he proved why in his first career start against the Vegas Raiders yesterday. Your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the Nuggets are getting more and more injured by the day. The latest on the Nuggets injury front next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in hour 2 on this Monday. We got Monday Night Football, Niners and Panthers coming up starting at 5 o'clock. In the meantime, I appreciate very much you watching the show on our social media platforms, most notably YouTube at XTRA Sports 1300. But if you type in that handle in Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, you will get this show on a daily basis there as well. While we're throwing out social media accounts at GingerWatch on Instagram, at Gingerly Tweets on X, if you want to follow me, interact with me outside of this show, and boost my self-esteem, because my self-esteem is directly tied to the number of followers I have on social media, as is the case really for every human being on planet Earth, right? Of course. I'm not the only one with these deficiencies, right? You can reach out via social media if you have thoughts on the day's topics, or you could text into the show at 719-247-1313. Friday night, while I was in La Jolla, which is not to be confused with San Diego, although I can't really tell the difference. I felt like I was still in San Diego when I was in La Jolla, but I was watching the Denver Nuggets on Friday night show why they are truly the biggest threat to the Oklahoma City Thunder. In a great game, epic matchup, back and forth. Nuggets were crushing Houston. Houston came roaring back in the second. Back and forth they went. I tweeted this out. I'll take 7 of these in the spring. Thank you very much. I will. I would love to see Denver and Houston go 7 games. Şengün against Jokic, and there's KD, and Amen Thompson is one of the up-and-coming young players in the league, and then there's Jokic and Murray and all of this kind of stuff. I thought it was a great game, but it was a game that meant a lot to Houston. Right? On their home floor, a chance to assert themselves as that biggest threat to OKC. It was a showcase game, and Denver went down to Houston and said, nope, it's us. And I think they deserve to be put above Houston in all of these conversations. Maybe even in a group by themselves, in a group of one. Because I do think that over the course of a 7-game series, as entertaining as that would be, I think that the Nuggets would get better. I would like the Nuggets' chances even more in a best 4 out of 7, as opposed to a one-off on a Friday night in Houston. I think that was a statement win by the Denver Nuggets. It wasn't a blowout, but they made a statement. And they did it without Aaron Gordon. And they're going to have to keep doing it without Aaron Gordon. Because he, like Christian Brown, are done through the holidays. Any Nuggets game you watch between now and New Year's, you're not going to see Christian Brown and you won't see Aaron Gordon. And I don't even know if they're going to be right back after, which is a little nervy if you're a Nuggets fan, right? The Christian Brown thing, it's like, okay, kind of a bummer, but I don't know that you lost a lot of sleep over it, not having Aaron Gordon. That feels different. That's more consequential. You can't replace Aaron Gordon. With all due respect, you can replace Christian Brown, and the Denver Nuggets have, and it's worked out just fine. Just fine. Aaron Gordon is going to be tougher. And you saw the first glimpse of that on Saturday. And you look at, and I like Spencer Jones, and I thought he played very well against Houston. But my God, if you have a guy in your starting five that scoring 1 point, that can't happen. So if Spencer Jones can't do more than give you 1 point against the Sacramento Kings, then you need to figure something else out. Because you can't have a guy getting 1 point and expecting to win the game. But you see, obviously, the missing Aaron Gordon is more consequential than missing Christian Braun. But now you have both of them out at the same time. So it's like Gordon's more important to the Denver Nuggets than Christian Braun by a wide margin, right? We would all agree on this. But now you have two guys out of your starting five. Could you imagine? And I think you could if you watch Saturday's game against Sacramento. Could you imagine what the Denver Nuggets would be going through for the next few weeks if this were last year and they were without Christian Braun and Aaron Gordon? Think about that. Think about how dire that circumstance would be. David Adelman's got some adjusting to do with his rotations. But this is another reason why, man, you are so glad that Ben Tenzer and John Wallace did what they did this offseason. Could you imagine what the Denver Nuggets would look like on a night in, night out basis without 2/5 of their starting lineup, and they don't have the depth of Tim Hardaway and Jonas Valanciunas and Bruce Brown? I don't know how many games they'd win. It wouldn't be many. You got the depth for the non-Jokic minutes, but man, are they glad to have it right now. Because this has a chance to be a real tough stretch for the Denver Nuggets without both of these guys together. Not so much tonight with the Memphis Grizzlies. They stink. But here's some of the games they have coming up over the next few weeks. They got Wemby, although is Wemby going to play on Black Friday? Well, stay tuned for that. Phoenix Suns, the upstart Phoenix Suns. They got Dallas, who's bad. Actually, I'm looking at this schedule, and I think if you're a Nuggets fan, you actually should feel a little bit better about this. But it starts with the depth. It starts with the fact that the Nuggets have Jonas Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway and Bruce Brown that they can – and David Adelman's got to figure out his rotations and everything. But I think you feel okay. Here's the schedule. And I know I saw people complaining about the road trips like, okay, that's fine. They play Memphis. They play San Antonio potentially without Victor Wembanyama. They take on Phoenix, who I think is probably not as good as their record says they are. They play Dallas, who's a dumpster fire. They take on Indiana without Halliburton. Atlanta is going to be interesting early December because that's an upstart team. That's a team that got a lot better this offseason. Charlotte's a mess. Orlando's a decent team. Well, Banchero will be back by then. Then you got another rematch with Houston. That might get ugly. You play Utah. I mean, they don't have a lot of tough games. They actually might survive for a bit here. But I look at, so prior to Christmas, you got a rematch with Houston they'd be a little bit worried about. And then obviously Christmas Day against Minnesota, but you did already beat Minnesota twice. So I don't know if that game, you have to have it with what happened the previous two. Then after Christmas, You go Orlando, Miami, Toronto, Cleveland. Yikes. And now the calendar turns to 2026, and you got the Fighting Michael Porter Juniors on Sunday, January 4th. Before Christmas, I think they can navigate it okay. Christmas and beyond, it might be a little bit rough for the Denver Nuggets if they're going to be truly without both Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon past January 1. But what allows you, not just the players, not just the teams that they face starting tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies, but it's about the fact that you actually have depth, that David Adelman will be able to figure it out. Second night of a back-to-back, you even healthy, you could have chalked up the Kings to a scheduled loss. Second night of a back-to-back after an emotional win, a big win against Houston. They could have lost that game to Sacramento anyway without the injuries. But now he's had a couple of days to figure it out. We'll see what he throws out there against Memphis tonight. If he's going to play Spencer Jones has got to score more than 1 point. Just say that. I know beggars can't be choosers. The depth of the Nuggets is being severely tested here. But Spencer Jones, you got to be more than this try-hard guy that you got to put some points on the board. It's the NBA. Everyone's scoring 130 a night. You got to do the same thing. So we'll see what David Adelman comes out with. The rotations in the lineup without Aaron Gordon or Christian Brown. But, man, just another reason why the Nuggets are really fortunate to be able to have made the moves that they made this offseason, because they would be in a really bad spot without Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown for the next month if it weren't for the depth that Tenzer and Wallace have acquired. 719-24-7-1313. Then, of course, you have the Colorado Avalanche, who may have Mackenzie Blackwood getting his groove back and Scott Wedgwood still in a groove. Talk the latest exploits of the Avs next on Extra Sports 1300. Get a jump on your holiday gift giving with the Louisa Graff Black Friday giveaway. Just go to extrasports1300.com to enter to win a sterling silver lab grown diamond pendant and earring set from Louisa Graff Jewelers. Entries close on Wednesday, November 26th. So we wait with bated breath when it comes to the next time out for Mackenzie Blackwood for the Colorado Avalanche. But I think you could say easily his performance on Saturday against the Nashville Predators is his best of the year. 35 shots faced, 35 saves, got the shutout. Avs win 3-0. And then they turned around yesterday and beat the Blackhawks 1-0. That game, with all due respect to Connor Bedard and company, I don't care that much about. I don't know that I even care a ton about how the Avalanche fare against the Nashville Predators. But I care about the way Mackenzie Blackwood looks. Because he's your number one goaltender. Call him 1A if you want. He's the first name. Tim, he's the starter. He's the guy. Wedgwood continues to do a great job, and combined, the Avs have the best goals allowed average in the league. And what's wild about Mackenzie Blackwood and what he's done, the Avs are 3-0-1 in the games he started. We're talking about Mackenzie Blackwood not looking good. He's given up, before Saturday, 3 goals, 4 goals, and 3 goals. The Avs have lost one of those games, and it was in a shootout. No, OT, I'm sorry. Overtime against the Sharks. His first game back. Like, I know that the Avalanche are going to need good goaltending to win a Stanley Cup. But isn't the plight of Mackenzie Blackwood, if you just take Mackenzie Blackwood's 4 starts, doesn't that kind of tell you right there? Isn't that a microcosm of the Colorado Avalanche? Like, yes, they need good goaltending, but not all the time. Like, they got a lot of other things going for them. Given the fact that they won 2 of the 3 games that Blackwood has started, and Blackwood has not looked good in those. Now, they were against Buffalo, Vancouver, and San Jose. Hardly 3 teams, along with Nashville, a 4th team, that you would put anywhere in the Stanley Cup conversation. But they need Mackenzie Blackwood to play like Mackenzie Blackwood did last year. And yet, the way Mackenzie Blackwood played last year is not Vezina Trophy caliber. Right? He's got to be the guy, but the bar's not that high for the guy because of how good this Avalanche team is. And they got back-to-back shutout wins, beating Nashville and Chicago. Don't be planning the parade route just yet. Nashville and Chicago are objectively terrible hockey teams. But it was good to see Mackenzie Blackwood face a high volume of shots. Not a ton of high danger chances, but high volume of shots, and turn away everyone. Because what you saw against Buffalo especially was just goals that Mackenzie Blackwood shouldn't give up. In the end, it didn't hurt the Colorado Avalanche, but it was just goals that Mackenzie Blackwood should be able to stop. So the Avs continue to absolutely roll. Despite, the Avs or Mackenzie Blackwood coming along slowly, despite the power play still not being where it needs to be, there's still room for this Avs team to grow. And yet you look at them, they're 7 points up on Dallas in the Central. And Winnipeg, who is 13 points back already, just lost Connor Hellebuck for a while. So, but good on Blackwood. Good on Blackwood and good on Wedgwood. Didn't get much goal support yesterday, and he was still able to pitch a shutout. Avs are rolling, man. They're so good right now. So good. 719-24-7, 13-13. Then there's this. The first big decision of the Paul DePodesta era has been made. It was made earlier today. The Colorado Rockies and Paul DePodesta, because he is in charge now, have decided that Warren Schaefer, who filled in on an interim basis as the manager of the Rockies this season, will remain the manager of the Colorado Rockies. He is now the full-time manager of the Colorado Rockies, had the interim tag removed or had his option picked up. However, they needed to do that. The record for the Rockies this year with Warren Schaefer was 36-86. I would understand if somebody saw this and went, really? Really? Warren Schaefer? This is your chance to get somebody new in, to get an accomplished manager to lead this ball club. But you decided that 26-86, 36-86, whatever it is good enough to become the full-time manager. And I am going to tell you yes. I'm going to tell you yes, and I'm going to tell you why it's yes. Because it's baseball and the manager doesn't matter. Because it's baseball and the manager doesn't matter. Not like it used to. Especially when you are in an analytically driven organization, which apparently the Rockies are now, with Paul DePodesta in charge. Warren Schaefer, all he's got to do is fire up the boys, which I will give him credit. It seemed like the guys were playing hard for him. So he can fire up the boys, and he's going to make all his decisions off of a spreadsheet. That's baseball, as Bud Black would say. I get it. It does absolutely stop any momentum that the Rockies might have had after hiring Paul DePodesta dead in its tracks. Because I saw a lot of people close to me, people not so close to me that are on social media, talking themselves into all of this and saying, you know what, I'm intrigued by it. I'm interested. I think it might work. And then they say Warren Schaefer at 36-86 is good enough to be the full-time manager of the Colorado Rockies. There are two requirements for most every managerial job in baseball. If you are the manager of the Yankees or the Dodgers or some of these high-profile jobs, then yes, there's more ego that you got to worry about and all this kind of stuff. But if you're in a situation like the Rockies are, where they're not going to be good next year or the year after, or probably the year after that, if we're being real about it, all you need your manager to do is be able to get the guys to go out there and play hard and to be able to clearly read an Excel spreadsheet. That's really all you have to do. DePodesta is going to be. This is like the Manchurian candidate. Warren Schaefer is not the manager of the Colorado Rockies. Paul DePodesta is. Just like so many of these analytically driven baseball teams are not truly managed by the guy that has manager next to his name. It's like Robert California. Decisions have been predetermined long ago, and there's no reason in fighting them. Warren Schaefer is going to know exactly what he needs to do in every situation with every hitter to the plate, because the analytics department of the Colorado Rockies will have that for him every morning when he gets to the ballpark. From a perception standpoint, I get it. This is lame, and this stops the Rockies' momentum dead in its tracks. But in practicality, this managerial hire is fine. It's fine. Warren Schaefer, even if you're being super optimistic about the Colorado Rockies and their future, the best thing you could say about Warren Schaefer is he's the guy before the guy. There is zero chance that Warren Schaefer is going to be able to coach the next good Rockies team. The minute DePodesta recognizes that they're trending in the right direction with Ethan Holiday and with Charlie Condon and the rest of the crew, which probably that's about it in terms of promising prospects. But once the Rockies start to look like they're on the verge of breaking through, they will fire Warren Schaefer. They'll say it's another losing season, and then they will go and bring in somebody else when the job is much more attractive. It's what they're going to do. So Warren Schaefer, he's fine. He's fine for now. Seems like a lovely guy. The boys seem to like to play for him. He can read. That's all you need. The more important, this was the next decision that Paul DePodesta needed to make, but this is not the biggest decision. Is he going to bring in a general manager underneath him? What is he going to do with the roster? We saw the Rockies over the weekend, cut ties with Michael Toglia, and that is another first-round pick of the Colorado Rockies that is no longer with the organization. There is stuff beyond the manager that is more important. Because Casey Stengel, Jim Leland, when he cared and didn't just smoke heaters in the Rockies dugout, Tony La Russa, name your favorite managers, name the best managers in the history of baseball. With this roster, they are doing nothing. What you have to hope, if you're a Rockies fan, is that Paul DePodesta can move the needle in the direction to where you at least feel like the Rockies are circling relevance, They're circling potentially having a winning record, and that'll be the moment DePodesta says thanks, but we're all good here, Warren Schaefer. Now I'm going to go out and try and get a more substantial managerial hire. Warren Schaefer, interim manager of the Rockies, no more. Paul DePodesta entrusts him to at least lead the Rockies this upcoming season. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Chauncey Billups has put in a plea in the face of multiple charges, not only when it comes to these poker games, these rigged poker games, but also feeding information to bettors in order to corner the market on Portland Trailblazers related business. I'll tell you what Chauncey Billups has pled coming up next on Extra Sports 1300. If you're watching the show on Instagram, you can always reach out there. Sean Martinez says, I actually think with the direction of the direction the Rockies are going, it is better in the locker room to have a guy that knows the team with the new GM. And that's true. There's going to be a lot of new with the Rockies organization in the personnel around the building, keeping some continuity while understand. And the manager is an easy place to keep that continuity, because we know what managers' roles are in analytical front offices in baseball, and we know where the Rockies are at right now. Is there a real reason to let Warren Schaefer go? Is there a reason? And I get it from Rockies fans maybe asking, is there a reason to keep him? Has he done anything to deserve to keep the job? No. Rockies didn't turn it around. And we've seen in-season changes. Remember Clint Hurdle, the bump they got when Clint Hurdle first took over as the manager, Jim Tracy? Like, there was none of that with Warren Schaefer. They were slightly less awful. That's not enough to earn the job. But if the players in that locker room like him, respond to him, what's the harm? You're not going anywhere this year. Get a guy that can at least get the most out of these guys, motivating them, and then it will actually allow Paul DePodesta to make maybe a better assessment of the talent on the field, knowing that they respond to this manager. And Paul DePodesta talked about this at the winter meetings when he was first named GM or VP, President Baseball Ops, whatever his title is. He said this. He was looking for a relationship manager. Why? Because strategy doesn't really matter where the Rockies are right now. It really doesn't. Get a manager that at least gets the guys to play hard so you can better assess whether the players on the field are worth keeping around. And inevitably, Paul DePodesta will find out that none of these guys on the Rockies are probably worth keeping around. Maybe Tovar, maybe an outfielder or two. Hunter Goodman. Like, I'm being hyperbolic when I say none of these guys. Very few Rockies players deserve to stay gainfully employed. But you'd at least like to know you're getting the best out of these guys because they want to play for their manager. What else we got going on? I mentioned before the break. So Chauncey Billups put in his plea. Are you sitting down for this? He pled not guilty. Shocker. Shocking development. I don't remember the last high-profile case where somebody went in and immediately pled guilty. He's like, yep, that was me. And his lawyer said a bunch of stuff today that you expect lawyers to say. Here's the bottom line with this. Don't forget in all of this, once it gets going, that Chauncey Billups is not only accused of being, I guess, the honeypot in all of this in a way. He's the guy enticing these gamblers, these unsuspecting gamblers, to come in and play in a rigged poker game, play with NBA Hall of Fame, basketball Hall of Famer Chauncey Billups. Not only is he accused of that, do not forget that he's also accused, or I should say, he also almost to a T fits the description of the guy who is feeding insider betting information about the Portland Trailblazers. Let's not forget the other half of this. I would say that the worst offense is definitely the poker games. That is robbery. That is fraud. So that is worse. But let's not forget that Chauncey Billups was not named by name, but also 100% fits the description of the guy that was feeding insider information to bettors in order for them to take advantage of the books, knowing things about the Blazers that even the books did not know yet, that the public did not know yet. That's the insider trading. That's not as significant as the rigged poker games, but he's accused of both. And where this is going to end up, I don't know legally how this is going to end up. My guess is Chauncey Billups pleads not guilty, cooperates, has his day in court, but cooperates with law enforcement authorities, probably ends up getting found guilty, or later on taking a plea. Anybody that's a lawyer, feel free to jump in here and tell me if I'm wrong on the order of events. I believe that this thing could still end up with Chauncey Billups agreeing to a lesser charge in exchange for cooperation. But Chauncey Billups as a basketball figure, that is it. There's no coming back from this. He's not going to be an NBA head coach again. And I don't know how the NBA would allow any of their television partners, all 85 of them now, to employ Chauncey Billups as an analyst. I mean, this is as close to a Pete Rose banning as we are going to get. Or I'll even why apples making apples to oranges. He's going to get the Jonte Porter treatment. He's done. He is done as a figure in the National Basketball Association. So his lawyer said something today about why he would risk all of this stuff. I'd be curious to know why he would risk all of this stuff too. But the fact of the matter is there's no rainbow here. There's no pot of gold at the end of this. The best Chauncey Billups can hope for is that he is not incarcerated. And Chauncey Billups, the citizen, can walk away from this free. But as an basketball figure, he is going to be persona non grata forever. Because I know ESPN just put out a piece today about Damon Jones. Get to know Damon Jones. Well, maybe you'll click on that. Maybe you won't. But right now, Chauncey Billups is the face of this. And unless the FBI totally whiffed here and got all of this wrong, Chauncey Billups will remain the face of this, and he will not be welcome in NBA circles again. But I would say at this point, that is the least of Chauncey Billups' concerns. But Chauncey pleaded not guilty to the charges he is facing. I'm not even exactly sure if he can be charged with anything in the other indictment about the insider trading. I don't know what comes along with that. And because Chauncey Billups wasn't named by name, pointed out by name in that one, you're not going to get news outlets being able to say Chauncey Billups said this about this charge and this about this charge. The poker games is what everyone is fixated on. It's the higher profile thing. It's the more serious thing. But let's also not forget that he fits the description of the guy feeding information to bettors about Blazer injuries and tanking and all of this kind of stuff. I don't know how Chauncey Billups, the basketball figure, survives this. But now that pleas are starting to come in, this is back at the forefront, and then we'll have a very high-profile trial coming up here. What else was I going to get to? Couple things that I missed. Baker Mayfield has a low-grade sprain in his left shoulder, which is good news in this wide open National Football League, save for the LA Rams. That is very good news for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that Baker Mayfield has a low-grade sprain. Jaden Daniels will practice this week, but is right now being characterized as a long shot to play Sunday night against the Denver Broncos. Of course, that will be the primary topic of conversation coming up on tomorrow's show that I will be back in studio for, and then it will be off to the Thanksgiving holiday. Appreciate your patronage today, and we'll reconvene tomorrow at 3. Don't forget, if you are interested, it will be the San Francisco 49ers and the Carolina Panthers. It is football. It is NFL football, and it is coming up in mere moments here on Extra Sports 1300.